Hi, it's Katrina. Imagine an ancient world swallowed whole. For generations, we dismissed stories of submerged kingdoms, of golden cities and civilizations that simply vanished as nothing more than folklore. These are places that should not exist, but we have found them. Today, we are diving into the deep sea to the mythological city that defied history, Dwarka. Marine archaeologists are racing to prove this is not just a myth, but a staggering 4,000-year-old empire. And Dwarka is only the beginning. The bottom of the sea is actually the world's greatest secret archive, a storage locker holding impossible cities, ancient empires, and terrifying creatures that history forgot. Let's dive in. Krishna's sunken city. Some cities crumble, some burn, and a surprising number of them actually sink, just like Krishna's legendary city of Dwarka. According to the Mahabharata, a very ancient and very sacred Hindu text, Dwarka was the glittering seaside kingdom of Lord Krishna himself. The scripture, which you could think of as the Hindu version of the Bible, tells us that Dwarka was built where the Gomti River meets the Arabian Sea, aka the Bronze Age's answer to Miami Beach. Legend says that after Krishna left Earth, his city, built of gold, gemstones, and logic-defying architecture, was swallowed whole by the ocean. Scholars call it mythology, but locals call it Tuesday because the crazy thing is, Dwarka is real. Not real like Atlantis real as in physically tangible. You can actually touch it underwater. Modern archaeologists are currently in the process of studying it. It may be a myth to some, but for the scientists, it is a logistical nightmare that requires waterproof notebooks and very patient divers. In this day and age, Dwarka has become the holy grail of underwater archaeology. Well, there is a real modern-day city of Dwarka called Bet Dwarka, so it's easy to get them mixed up. But here we are talking about the legendary underwater one. There are very real sonar maps and coordinates. Marine archaeologists have been diving into the ruins of Dwarka for over a decade, and now there is an increasingly competitive race to find the city walls before the fish move in permanently. Remember the space race? Well, Indian archaeologists are currently in the Krishna race. The city is real, it's been found, and the stones are there. Now it's a matter of figuring out what the heck this place really is, because surely it's not a city of gold and gems built by a god, right? The Archaeological Survey of India's Underwater Archaeology Wing recently ran side-scan sonar and multi-beam surveys that lit up their monitors with anomalies. That is archaeologists speak for something solid that isn't just coral pretending to be important. The team identified what appear to be jetty walls, grapnel-type stone anchors, and something that looks suspiciously like the remains of an ancient pier. Even more exciting is the Harappan-style stone anchors and inscribed potsherds that were recovered, some lying just 15 feet below the surface. It's not exactly Atlantis-level architecture yet, but it's close enough to make even the skeptics stop rolling their eyes. This isn't like the Yonaguni Monument in Japan, the giant sunken object that looks like a pyramid but might just be the stoniest coincidence on the planet. The ruins of Dwarka have produced actual artifacts, confirming the ruins are man-made and not just weirdly smooth rocks. Leading the charge this season was an all-woman team of diver archaeologists. Headed by Professor Alok Tripathi, the core team composed of Dr. Aparajita Sharma, Poonam Vind, and Raj Kumari Barbina, which has been meticulously exploring the southern flank of Gomati Creek. That is the same area first probed in the 1980s when people still thought photogrammetry was a Scrabble word. I mean, it is a Scrabble word, but it's also the science of learning about something using photographic images, which is what our all-star lady archaeologists did. Armed with high-resolution cameras, sediment corers, and enviable lung capacity, the crew combined data from photogrammetry, optically stimulated luminescence dating, and geochemical analysis. If you didn't understand a word I just said, no worries. It took me a few times to say it all right. Basically, they used a lot of hocus-pocus science techniques to nail down a solid date for the creation of the city. Early results point to a late Harappan-era origin, placing the sunken city somewhere between 1800 and 1500 BC. Not too shabby. If true, Dwarka's underwater ruins would predate many classical civilizations, but not Egypt or Mesopotamia. And so far, nobody has found any buildings made of gold or gems, and nobody has found any graffiti or carving saying that Krishna was here. This isn't the first time archaeologists have gone diving for Krishna's lost city. Earlier excavations between 2005 and 2007 turned up anchors, sculptures, and a staggering 26 cultural layers. Each new find pushed the timeline further back, but never quite delivered the definitive eureka moment the world wanted. Now that moment is here. The team of researchers showed up for a new season with fresh optimism and slightly better equipment. With sonar mapping, advanced sediment dating, and an oceanographic strategy that doesn't rely on wishful thinking, they've gotten closer to the truth than anyone. But there are still gaps. It does look like Dwarka was real, built during the late Harappan period 3,800 years ago. The presence of anchors and piers suggests it prospered as a maritime hub. The fact it's all underwater confirms it was eventually claimed by the sea. There are still too many pieces missing though, like who built it, how did it sink, and where did all the residents go when calamity struck? Some scientists blame climate change for destroying the city. After all, ancient coastal civilizations worldwide, from Heraklion in Egypt to Pablo Petri in Greece, suffered similar fates around the same time, hinting at a widespread rise in sea levels. Dwarka may have just been India's most unsung victim. Luckily, there's an upcoming expedition in November 2025. By the time this video hits your screen, the expedition might have actually wrapped up. The UAW plans to survey the entire stretch of underwater land between Dwarka and Bet Dwarka before deciding on excavation sites. There's even an open call for volunteers and students to enroll in underwater archaeology courses and lecture programs. If you've ever wanted to combine your fascination with mythology and your fear of drowning, this is your chance. If you're worried about having to do any heavy lifting while focusing on breathing underwater, don't sweat it. The divers aren't planning to pull everything out. Instead, they are focusing on in situ conservation, meaning Dwarka will remain where it is, quietly resting under the Arabian Sea, and scientists will try their best to preserve it where it sits. Whether or not Dwarka turns out to be the city Krishna once ruled, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And now for a crazy underwater discovery found by accident. But first, I want to give a big shout out to C. James Harder watching from Prince Rupert City and Carl Hutton Meister from Melbourne, Australia. Thanks so much for watching. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. The Lake Huron Shipwreck. This is the story of how two filmmakers trying to film mussels ended up with a century-old ghost ship instead. It's got more twists and turns than any mussel documentary has a right to have. Some discoveries begin with destiny, others with dumb luck, and this one involved both, plus a drone. Yvonne Drobert and Zach Melnick, two Canadian filmmakers documenting the spread of invasive mussels in the Great Lakes, weren't exactly hunting for treasure. Their biggest hope was maybe a good time-lapse of shells doing whatever invasive mussels do. Then one day, scientists doing a fish survey spotted a weird bump on sonar. Drobert and Melnick figured they'd check it out, expecting a pile of rocks. Instead, their underwater drone descended into the green silence of Lake Huron to a depth of 278 feet and came face to face with history. Out of the gloom rose a massive shadowy form like some kind of monster. It was a wooden hull, still eerily intact, draped in layers of quagga mussels like a shipwreck-shaped, seafood-themed wedding cake. A huge structure loomed up from the depths, Melnick said. It was a shipwreck. We couldn't believe it. I would have been shocked too. You head out to make a documentary about seafood restaurant appetizers in the wild and then stumble upon what experts now believe is the Africa. As in the Africa. The cargo ship that vanished in 1895 while hauling coal from Ohio to Ontario. She went down in a blizzard, taking 11 sailors with her. For 128 years, no one had seen her. No one knew where the ship had come to rest after the disaster. Then two filmmakers accidentally crashed her gravesite with a camera, and now everyone wants a piece of it. At first, identifying the wreck was difficult. Every inch of the ship was crusted with quagga shells. These quagga mussels are the Great Lakes' infamous squatters. They've been wrecking the ecosystem and making the water so clear you can see your regrets at the bottom. You think I'm joking, but I'm serious. The quagga mussel is an invasive animal that has literally made Lake Huron and some other Great Lakes unnaturally clear. And yes, I'm going to tell you why. There are so many of these mussels in Lake Michigan, and they are such efficient filter feeders that every 2 weeks they filter the entire volume of the lake. This is bad for other creatures in the lake because it makes the water unlivable. It's great for humans because Lake Michigan is so clear, it's the most Instagrammable body of water in America, but that's because it's been invaded by quadrillions of hungry mussels. The irony is cruel, but also interesting. The same quagga mussels destroying the Great Lakes are also the reason the filmmakers could see the ship so clearly. Dwarka said the lakes are up to 3 times as clear as they were before the mussels, so you can actually see 300 feet down like you're in the bathtub. So the mussels made Lake Huron beautiful and biologically doomed, a bit like cleaning your house by setting it on fire. Dwarka and Melnick set out to film mussels, but instead found a 128-year-old ghost ship. And it's still down there, resting quietly and majestically on the floor of the lake. It will forever be a reminder that sometimes the best discoveries happen when you're just minding your own business, trying to film something slimy. Homo erectus and the Lost World. Archaeologists love a good plot twist as much as the next guy, so imagine their excitement when they found evidence of a lost world hidden off the coast of Java, Indonesia. There, in what used to be a lowland paradise and is now prime scuba territory, scientists dredged up fossilized evidence of a long-drowned world and the people who once called it home. The stars of the show are 2 skull fragments of Homo erectus, a species that has spent over a century confusing, delighting, and humbling archaeologists by turning up wherever they least expect them. This time, Homo erectus skulls came with 36 other animal species, just to prove they weren't lonely. Apparently, these prehistoric humans were history's weirdest zookeepers. The discovery, courtesy of Leiden University's Harold Burgess and his international dream team of geniuses, offers the first direct evidence of life from the seabed of Sundaland, a region that 140,000 years ago was not ocean floor, but a sprawling tropical plain. Picture Southeast Asia's version of Pangea, but with better fruit. Let me explain it in a little more detail. Before sea levels rose and geography got complicated, what is now the Indonesian archipelago was one big continental neighborhood. Sumatra, Java, and Borneo weren't islands. They were mountain ranges dotting an endless expanse of grassland, rivers, and prehistoric traffic jams. These jams consisted of elephants, hippos, and possibly some very cranky rhinos. When glaciers locked away Earth's water during the penultimate ice age, meaning the ice age before the last ice age, the global sea level dropped about 330 feet. When that happened, Sundaland thrived. And you know what else thrived? Our ancient friends, Homo erectus. Our ape-like cousins chilled out with Komodo dragons in what was probably not far off from a Garden of Eden situation. Exotic creatures roaming around, as much food as a person can eat, and only about 9 human beings in the whole area. It was great. For a bit. A bit being 140,000 years. After that, the glaciers started melting, and when they did, the world flooded. Sea levels rose 330 feet, drowning Sundaland and completely erasing whatever civilization they had built for themselves. Here's the thing. Sundaland was a real paradise inhabited by real humans. Okay, they weren't Homo sapiens, but they were close enough. Scientists suspect they may have even had their own religion and primitive technology. So yes, they could have built a proto-civilization in Sundaland. And when the floods came, that civilization, if it existed, was destroyed. Now the whole region sits beneath the Java Sea, occasionally spitting up fossils like an ancient vending machine of paleontological surprises. Earlier finds from sites like Trinil, Sangiran, and Negangdong painted Homo erectus on Java as somewhat isolated, like home buddies with stone tools and no particular ambitions beyond surviving the next monsoon. But the new discoveries from the Madura Strait, underwater, tell a juicier story. These early humans weren't just foraging like lazy bears, they were full-blown river valley foodies. Cut marks on turtle shells and bovid bones show they were actively hunting, butchering, and enjoying marrow snacks before it was paleo chic. Even more intriguing, their butchering style looks suspiciously similar to techniques seen in Homo sapiens populations on mainland Asia. While you could chalk this up to coincidence, after all, how many different ways can you prep turtle steak? It could mean something more. It could mean our ancestors might not have been as antisocial as we thought. There may have been trade, imitation, or even gene flow between the species, which means that Homo sapiens may have been getting it on with Homo erectus, and they maybe even played house. Similar cooking techniques, similar tools, same number of limbs. Homo sapiens may have been friends with Homo erectus. They may have conquered Sunderland together. The Homo erectus fossils dredged up from the deep now reside in the Geological Museum in Bandung, where an exhibition is being planned to show them off. Expect long lines of people pretending to understand sediment layers while secretly hoping for a gift shop mammoth plushie. Sunderland's story is equal parts triumph and tragedy. It's a reminder that climate change, land loss, and mass migration aren't uniquely modern problems. They are recurring plot lines in Earth's very long and very wet history. When sea levels rose after the ice melted, the Great Plains of Sunderland disappeared, leaving behind islands, legends, and the occasional archaeologist grinning through a snorkel. One day, whether humans are still here or not, the water will freeze and Sunderland will emerge once again. Whether anyone or anything is alive to see it, that's up to us. The Unsinkable pirate ship. If ships had personalities, the Ningpo would be the stubborn old warhorse at the bar, grumbling something about friends dying face down in the muck. The ship is dirty, scarred, creaking, and slightly singed, and somehow still in mostly one piece. Born in 1753 in the Chinese port of Fuzhou, this three-masted dragon of a junk was originally a merchant vessel named King Typhoon. And quick FYI, a junk is an old type of Chinese sailing ship. I'm not being mean calling it junk. Don't ask me why it's called that, it just is. But like so many of us, the Ningpo's first job didn't last. Within a few decades, she went from carrying goods to carrying trouble. In the late 18th century, the Ningpo was smuggling, slaving, and rebelling against emperors like it was going out of style. She fought Dutch privateers, dodged the Royal Navy, and acquired a reputation that made even pirates steer clear. Her resume included mutiny, insurrection, and enough blood on her deck to make the planks permanently sticky. So how in the world did a Chinese pirate junk end up in the US of A? I should be extremely clear about one thing. The Ningpo wasn't just infamous, it was a masterclass in pre-industrial engineering. At 138 feet long and weighing 291 tons, her hull was a blend of brute force and artistic flair. The Ningpo's builders modeled her after a dragon, complete with wide eyes on the bow, fin-like sails, and a high, curling stern that gave the illusion of a tail slicing through the sea. If intimidation were a design principle, the Chinese nailed it. And the Ningpo was tough, absurdly tough. Built from teak and ironwood, materials dense enough to make fighting sticks out of, she shrugged off centuries of salt, storm, and sabotage. Her 8 watertight bulkheads were early precursors to modern compartmentalization. What's that, you ask? Compartmentalization is how you keep all your traumas from turning you into an insane person. You compartmentalize. But in shipbuilding terms, it means if one section flooded, the other stayed dry. Different compartments made running into icebergs a lot safer. Even her caulking was ingenious. The Ningpo's builders used a mixture of cocoa fiber, fishing nets, and animal fat to seal everything and keep it watertight. Basically, the ship was held together by equal parts science and stubbornness. Iron spikes the size of daggers pinned her ribs, and her bamboo cables were lighter, yet stronger than rope. Add in 2 swivel guns, a few dozen swords, and a lot of badassery, and you had yourself a floating fortress that wouldn't quit. So now that you know what kind of vessel we're dealing with, let's check out her downward spiral into infamy. By 1796, the Ningpo had gone fully rogue. She joined the rebellion against the Qing emperor, an act that guaranteed her a spot on every wanted list from Shanghai to Singapore. In 1806, she was captured for piracy, but not forever. By 1834, she was back at it, cruising the seas and pillaging vessels. But let's be real, the age of piracy was at its end. There was no more room for seafaring rogues in the rapidly advancing civilized world. In 1841, the Chinese government seized the Ningpo and turned her into a prison ship. Almost half a century of piracy, and suddenly the Ningpo was a prison for those she once carried freely. On her deck, officials executed 158 prisoners by beheading, turning her into what was essentially a floating horror museum. Visitors later reported seeing the original chopping block displayed like a tourist attraction, along with starvation cages and rusted swords. Nothing says authentic experience quite like a headless pirate exhibit. I feel like I know what starvation cages are, but I don't really want to get that grim. Instead, let's find out why they call the Ningpo the unkillable ship. In 1861, a typhoon wrecked her, just slapped the ship around like it owed the storm money. But of course, she got better. Pirates salvaged and repaired her, and then used the Ningpo to raid Hong Kong harbor. I guess piracy wasn't over yet in China. Then came 1901, when rebels at Hankow captured her in yet another battle. Shortly after, the ship was sold to some opportunistic Americans for $50,000. It was a small fortune then, roughly equivalent to one shopping cart full of groceries today. The Americans who bought the Ningpo towed her across the Pacific Ocean, first to San Pedro, then to Venice Beach, and finally to San Diego, where she became an oddity for tourists. I can just see the kids on the boardwalk selling tickets. Step aboard the real pirate ship, guaranteed haunted. When the Ningpo made it to America, she was 160 years old, battered but unbowed. You might say she was the maritime equivalent of Keith Richards. And like Keith, she was about to become a star. In the 1930s, the Ningpo became a film star. She appeared in early adventure pictures, the kind with sound. You could see her dragon bow glinting under the California sun on the silver screen. Alas, the entertainment industry is cruel, and her final act was explosive. Accounts differ on what exactly happened. Some say she was destroyed accidentally. Others claim she burned during filming. Either way, her death came in 1938 by way of fire. It's unclear if it was on set, part of a scene, or a fluke accident. Either way, she went up in flames. After nearly 2 centuries of storms, mutinies, and executions, the Ningpo was finally undone by movie magic gone wrong. Probably. Today, her remains are believed to rest off the California coast, scattered beneath layers of silt and sadness. It's known that she was wrecked in Catalina Harbor. Over the years, a handful of random parts of the ship have been recovered, but as of 2025, there are no plans to bring her to the surface. Do you think there should be? Maybe you could start a petition to save the Ningpo. The knight who lost his sword. If you think your weekend hobby has gotten out of hand, try coming back from a swim holding a 900-year-old crusader sword. It's like going out for a jog and coming home with a mammoth tusk. But that's exactly what happened to Shlomi Katzin, a diver off the coast of Israel who surfaced one sunny afternoon cradling what looked like Poseidon's letter opener. Shlomi found a massive barnacle-encrusted weapon that hadn't seen daylight since knights were a thing. The blade, roughly 3 feet long with a large hilt, was found resting quietly on the seabed near Haifa's Carmel coast, a popular tourist area better known for snorkeling and iced coffee than medieval relics. The sword was blanketed in mollusks, which is nature's way of saying this thing hasn't been touched since the Pope still sent emails by carrier pigeon. When Katzin brought it ashore, the Israel Antiquities Authority nearly dropped their falafels. Inspector Nir Distelfeld declared the sword to be in perfect condition, which is frankly incredible considering it had been marinating in salt water for 9 centuries. The story of Katzin's great discovery spread like wildfire. And are you really surprised? It's a unique tale about an ordinary diver unearthing a weapon once wielded by a knight, one who probably shouted things like Deus Vult before charging into battle during the Crusades. But did this knight charge into battle or run sword first into the sea? Now I'm kind of wondering what kind of knight yeets his sword into the water. No one knows, but I can tell you what our lucky swimmer did next. Katzin took the sword, this amazing relic of ancient history, and handed it over to the authorities. He could have mounted it on his wall or sold it on the black market, but he gave it to the experts so they could preserve it. For his honesty, Katzin received an Outstanding Citizen Award. It's what the government hands out when someone could have sold something on eBay and retired early, but handed it over anyway so that kids can gawk at it on a forced field trip. Divers with the Israel Antiquities Authority soon returned to the site of Katzin's discovery, where they found fragments of pottery, stone anchors, and what might have been a spying stone. I haven't talked about spying stones in a while. These were ancient maritime versions of binoculars, but made out of rocks. They weren't very effective, but people did use them. It involved a lot of squinting. Archaeologists are now convinced that the area off the coast of Haifa is a kind of underwater time capsule spanning 4,000 years of trade, conflict, and the occasional shipwreck tragedy. But what we care about today is the sword. Whose sword was it? Who forged it? Who was slain with it? We want the details. Inspector Near Distelfeld described it as beautiful and rare, a weapon unmistakably belonging to a Crusader knight. Its cruciform hilt represents the Christian faith while also being handy for parrying. Experts think the hilt is indicative of the High Middle Ages, when Europe's best-armed pilgrims marched east to liberate the Holy Land. Though it is worth noting that historically speaking, the Crusades were less of a religious road trip and more of a multi-century geopolitical train wreck. The Crusades, spanning the 11th to 13th centuries, brought armored nobles from France, England, and Germany to the Levant. And what did they do there? Crusaders founded short-lived Christian states, argued with everyone, and built castles impressive enough to make Disney go back to the drawing board. But in the end, they never could take the Middle East. If you want to get technical, it's been 1,000 years and the West still hasn't taken the Middle East. This sword's owner could have been a member of any of the legendary military orders involved in the Crusades. The Knights Templar, the Hospitallers, or the Teutonic Knights instantly come to mind. Each vowed poverty, chastity, and obedience. Although in the end, the Crusaders turned out to mostly be bloodthirsty looters who mainly wanted to pillage. The Carmel Coast, where Katzen found the sword, was once a crucial natural anchorage for Crusaders, a safe haven for ships caught in storms. Director of the IAA's Marine Archaeology Unit, Kobe Sharvit, explained that the coastline offered perfect shelter. And because of that natural protection, the area attracted generations of merchants, explorers, and more than a few shipwreck victims. Safe haven or not, people and their ships sank here, and over the centuries, the artifacts lost in their cargo remained preserved within the sand and sediment, acting like a security blanket to keep everything pristine. Now, all it takes to reveal these treasures is one lucky flipper kick. That's what happened to our unlikely protagonist. Waves, or maybe some flipper action, shifted just enough sand to uncover the sword's hilt, catching Katzen's eye like Excalibur winking from the seabed. One has to wonder what their reaction was when the long-dead knight who lost his sword saw it go overboard. 900 years ago, a proud knight may have leaned over the railing of a ship and said, "Well, that's gone forever." But it wasn't gone forever, only 9 centuries. Now it's going to be in a museum where everyone can enjoy it, and hopefully no one uses it for pillaging again. Now let's move past these artifacts and check out a 3-eyed moth. Evolution is about to get weird. The Monster Sea Moth from Hell. Roughly 541 million years ago, when the ocean looked like an alien smoothie and everything had too many limbs, nature was going through what biologists politely call a creative phase. Out of this primordial brainstorm came Mosura fentoni, a creature so strange it could have walked straight out of a Studio Ghibli concept sketch. Small, flat, and armed with 3 eyes, it swam around the Cambrian seas like a tiny UFO with an overachieving biology degree. Paleontologists Joseph Moisiuk and Jean-Bernard Caron introduced this new fossil find to the scientific world with the kind of calm understatement only scientists can manage. Because when you find a 3-eyed sea moth older than most mountain ranges, it's kind of a big deal. The team named it Mosura fentoni, a living nod to Mothra, Japan's benevolent, city-crushing kaiju. It's not every day an animal gets compared to a skyscraper-sized monster, but when you have 3 eyes and wings like a pancake-shaped angel, what else can you do? The Mosura fentoni fossil was discovered in British Columbia and is the only species of its kind. The fossil is also barely the length of your pinky nail. I've been talking this animal up as some great alien-like monstrosity, but the truth is that it was barely as long as a fingernail shaving. Not to worry though, what it lacked in size, it made up for in flair. It had a short head, flappy fins for gliding, delicate shrimp-snatching appendages, and enough gills to make a merman uncomfortable. You can think of it as the Cambrian equivalent of a Roomba, except instead of cleaning your floor, it vacuumed up unsuspecting plankton in a never-ending feeding frenzy. Technically, Mosura was a radiodont, part of a clan of arthropods that ruled the seas before fish even existed. Its infamous cousin, Anomalocaris, was the ocean's original nightmare, the result of a shrimp and a circular saw having a child. But Mosura was the quiet, discerning sibling. It was smaller, stealthier, and specialized in bite-sized meals instead of large prey. Now, about that third eye, because if you have more than 2 eyes, you can bet I'm probably going to mention the extra one. Mosura fentoni wasn't some type of magical prophet, and it didn't see the stock market crash coming. Instead, its extra median eye probably helped it detect light and orient itself while darting around ancient reefs. Researchers compared this ancient animal to living dragonflies, which have 5 eyes, because 2 is not enough when you are a high-speed aerial assassin. This makes Mosura the aquatic ancestor of every bug that's ever stared at you like it knows something you don't with all those creepy, creepy eyes. If you thought the weirdness stopped at 3-eyed moth shrimp, buckle up. Inside the fossil, scientists found reflective patches nicknamed tonguelets, a term that sounds like an indie rock band but actually refers to hints of an open circulatory system. In essence, M. fentoni pumped a gooey, blood-like fluid called hemolymph through its body cavities. This discovery is kind of a big deal because it suggests that this open plumbing system existed way earlier than anyone thought. In the polite language of paleontology, this changes our understanding of early arthropod physiology. Or, in normal human language, 500 million years ago, the ocean was full of tiny 3-eyed disco shrimp with advanced cardiovascular systems. From now on, whenever you see a moth slamming into your porch light, remember its ancestors had 3 eyes, built-in jet fins, and names cool enough to headline a Godzilla movie. Somewhere, Mothra is proud. Thanks for watching! Which of these sunken underwater mysteries did you love the most? Are you into pirate ships, lost cities of gods, or creepy shrimp-like creatures? Let me know in the comments. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon. Bye!